4-year-old homeless girl finds a millionaire being beaten by bikers. But she appears behind them and does something that shocks everyone. Comment and rate my story from 0 to 10. Your opinion is very important. And subscribe to my channel to support my work. I'm counting on your help. The scorching afternoon sun beat down on the asphalt of the chaotic metropolis when the 4-year-old homeless girl, so small and fragile she looked barely 2, rummaged through food scraps in a dumpster near the shopping district. Her tiny fingers searched for any crumb that might quell the hunger that had gnawed at her for days when a disturbing sound cut through the city's stifling air. Desperate cries echoed from a narrow, dark alley, mixed with the sound of punches and kicks. The little girl raised her skinny head, her large, dark eyes fixing on the direction of the violent sounds. Her childish curiosity overcame the fear that always accompanied her in the dangerous streets. Slipping through the shadows with the agility of someone who had learned to survive on the streets, she approached the entrance of the alley. What she saw made her freeze for a few seconds. 3 masked bikers surrounded a well-dressed man who looked like he was a soap opera star and the build of movie star. The 30-year-old widowed millionaire was lying on the ground, bleeding, while his aggressors kicked him mercilessly. "Just sign these papers, pretty boy," one of the men shouted, waving some blood-stained documents. "Or you're leaving here on a stretcher." The businessman tried to protect himself as best he could, but the blows were relentless. His expensive shirt was torn, his face swollen and cut. With each kick, he groaned in pain, but refused to pick up the papers offered to him. The little girl watched horrified, her small heart beating erratically. Something inside her, an inexplicable compassion that contrasted with her tender age, impelled her forward. Without thinking of the consequences, she emerged from the shadows, and with her childish but surprisingly determined voice, began to scream for help. "Help! Help! They're hurting him!" she yelled with all the strength of her small lungs, her voice echoing through the alley walls and spreading through the busy streets of the metropolis. The bikers turned around startled, not expecting witnesses in that secluded spot. The unexpected presence of the child caught them completely off guard. The sound of her screams was attracting unwanted attention, and they could hear voices approaching the alley entrance. "Damn, people are coming!" one of them whispered, quickly pocketing the documents. "Let's go!" "This isn't over, rich boy," the group leader growled, giving the fallen man one last kick. "Next time you won't be so lucky." The 3 ran away, leaving the businessman unconscious on the dirty alley floor. The little girl approached slowly, her bare feet making noise in the dust and debris scattered around the place. She knelt beside the injured man, her large eyes studying the cuts on his face. The millionaire slowly opened his eyes, his vision blurred by pain. When he managed to focus, he saw the dirty, worried face of the child watching him. There was something in those dark eyes, a premature wisdom that shouldn't exist in someone so young, a reflection of suffering no child should know. Are you okay, mister?" she asked in her sweet little voice, extending a dirty little hand to gently touch his bruised arm. He tried to sit up, groaning in pain. Blood trickled from a cut on his forehead, staining his white shirt. He looked at the skeletal girl in front of him. Torn clothes, disheveled hair, skin marked by life on the streets, and felt an inexplicable connection with that small figure who had risked her safety to save him. I think so," he murmured, wiping the blood from his face with the back of his hand. "You saved me, kid. Why did you do that?" She shrugged, as if saving strangers was the most natural thing in the world. "They were hurting you." "That's bad." Voices approached the alley, curious people attracted by the girl's screams. The businessman stood up with difficulty, still dizzy from the beating he had taken. He looked in his wallet for some change to give the child, but when he looked up, she had disappeared as silently as she had appeared. Alone in the alley, he touched the cut on his forehead and looked at the blood stains on his fingers. Those men wanted to force him to sign documents that would transfer his stake in the family company. He knew who was behind the attack, and the certainty filled him with a cold fury. But for a few moments, his mind returned to the mysterious girl. Who was she? Why did such a small child live alone on the dangerous streets of the metropolis? And above all, why had she risked everything to save a complete stranger? As he walked slowly out of the alley, wiping away the blood that was still trickling, he couldn't get out of his head those large, sad eyes that seemed to carry the weight of the whole world. 3 days had passed since the attack in the alley, and the businessman couldn't concentrate on anything. Sitting at his mahogany desk on the 30th floor of an imposing skyscraper, he looked out the panoramic window while distractedly touching the bandage that covered the cut on his forehead. The view of the metropolis stretched before him, millions of lights twinkling, cars rushing like ants along the avenues, lives happening in every illuminated window. But his thoughts were stuck on those large, sad eyes. There was something in the way the girl had looked at him, a connection he couldn't explain or forget. For years, since losing his wife in a devastating accident, he had closed himself off from the world, building emotional walls that no one could cross. "Sir, the private investigator has arrived," his secretary announced through the intercom, interrupting his reverie. "Send him in," he replied, straightening up in his executive chair. The man who entered the room was exactly what he expected from an investigator. Ordinary appearance, simple clothes, attentive eyes that seemed to catalogue every detail of the luxurious environment. He had hired this professional to find out more about the attack and, above all, about the identity of the aggressors. "I got some information about the men who attacked you," the investigator said, opening a file. "They're hired thugs. Someone with a lot of money is financing these intimidations." The businessman wasn't surprised. His suspicions fell on his greedy partner, a man who had shown increasing interest in buying his stake in the family construction company. After inheriting the construction empire when he lost his wife, he had become the only obstacle between the partner and total control of the company. "There's something else," the investigator continued, hesitating. "While investigating the case, I discovered information about a child who frequents that area. A little girl, alone, who has been living on the streets for at least 2 years." The millionaire's heart quickened. "Go on." "According to local merchants, she appeared out of nowhere 2 years ago. Very small, scared, looking for someone. They say she always asked about a woman, probably her mother. Over time, she stopped asking and started living off the scraps she can find. And the mother? What happened to her? Disappeared without a trace. Worked as a cleaner in several buildings downtown, including this one. A woman named... well, the records are confusing. But she simply vanished one night, leaving her daughter behind." The businessman felt a pang in his chest. The idea of such a small child abandoned and alone bothered him deeply. He thought of his own privileged childhood, surrounded by care and luxuries, and then of the life of that brave girl who had risked everything to save him. "I want you to find her," he said suddenly. "The girl. Find out where she is, how I can help her." The investigator seemed surprised. "Sir, that might be complicated. Street children are usually suspicious of adults, especially well-dressed ones. She may run if she knows she's being searched for. Then be discreet. But find her." After the investigator left, the businessman returned to the window. Something had changed inside him since the encounter in the alley. The calculating coldness that protected him from the world began to crack, like ice under the strong sun. For the first time in years, he cared about something beyond business and profits. Meanwhile, on the other side of the city, the girl walked through the familiar streets with her small, cautious steps. She had learned to recognize the signs of danger. Police officers who might take her to some terrible orphanage, other homeless people who might hurt her, angry shopkeepers who chased her off their sidewalks. But today, there was something different in the air. She felt like she was being watched. Several times during the day, she had noticed a man in a simple suit following her at a distance. Her survival intuition, developed through 2 years on the streets, warned her of danger. When night fell, she hid in her secret refuge, a narrow space between 2 abandoned buildings, protected by cardboard boxes and covered by an old tarp she had found in the trash. There, she curled up in dirty rags and tried to forget the hunger that gnawed at her small stomach. In her fragmented dreams, she always saw the same scene. Her mother leaving for work on a rainy night, promising to be back soon, and then never coming back. She would wake up calling for her, but only the empty echo answered in her solitary hiding place. The next morning, the businessman made a decision that surprised even his efficient secretary. Instead of going straight to the office, he went down to the area where he had been attacked. Wearing simpler clothes, jeans and a t-shirt, he walked through the streets, observing every corner, every alley, every child who passed. He found her near the same place where it had all started. She was sitting on the sidewalk, drawing on the ground with a piece of charcoal she had found. Her drawings were surprisingly detailed for such a young child. Houses with smoking chimneys, families holding hands, birds flying in blue skies that existed only in her imagination. He approached slowly, taking care not to scare her. When she looked up and recognized him, a mixture of surprise and fear crossed her dirty little face. "Aye," he said softly, crouching down to her height. "Remember me?" She nodded timidly, hugging her skinny knees to her chest. "Are you better? Are you not hurt anymore?" "I'm better, thanks to you." He watched the drawings on the ground. "You draw very well. Did you learn by yourself?" "My mom taught me," she replied quietly, a deep sadness taking over her eyes. Before she left, "Where did she go?" The girl shrugged, as if the question was impossible to answer. "I don't know. She went to work and never came back. I waited a long time, but—" Her voice trailed off, and the businessman felt his heart break. Here was a child who had lost everything, but still had found the courage to save a stranger. The irony wasn't lost on him. She had saved a man who had everything in life when she herself had nothing. "What's your name?" he asked gently. "People call me Little One," she replied. "My mom used to call me another name, but I forgot. Are you hungry, Little One?" She nodded shyly, as if admitting hunger was some kind of personal failing. He reached out his hand, but she recoiled instinctively. "I'm not going to hurt you," he promised. "I want to take you to get something to eat, to thank you for saving me." For a long moment she studied him with those large, wise eyes that were too wise for her age. Finally, as if she had made an important decision, she took his small, dirty hand. As they walked together through the busy streets, neither of them noticed the sinister figure watching them from afar. The businessman's greedy partner had decided it was time to step up the pressure, and the presence of that mysterious child might be exactly the leverage he needed. The family restaurant where the businessman took the girl was simple but welcoming. He deliberately chose a discreet location, away from the fancy establishments he frequented, where they could talk without attracting attention. The little one sat on the chair like a frightened bird, her eyes wide at the amount of food he had ordered. "You can eat as much as you want," he said softly, watching how she picked up small pieces of bread with her delicate fingers. "You don't have to rush." She chewed slowly, as if she wanted to prolong that moment of abundance. Between bites, she recounted fragments of her life on the streets, where she slept when it rained, how she avoided danger, where she found clean water to drink. Each account was a stab in the heart of the rich man, who realized the extent of the child's suffering. "Aren't you afraid to be alone?" he asked, trying to keep his voice casual. "I am," she admitted, wiping her mouth with the back of her hand. "Especially at night. Sometimes I dream that Mom comes back, but when I wake up she's not there. What if I told you I could help you look for your mother?" The girl's eyes lit up with a painful hope. "Would you do that?" "Really? Yes, I would. But you would have to trust me." She was silent for a moment, as if weighing that possibility. Finally, she nodded with surprising determination for someone so young. After lunch, they walked through the central streets of the metropolis. The businessman wanted to show the girl that not everyone was dangerous, that there were people willing to help. But while they were talking, he didn't realize that they were being followed by two sinister figures. The greedy partner had hired more thugs to watch the businessman's movements. When he learned about his connection with the street girl, he saw a perfect opportunity to tighten the noose even further. If he couldn't intimidate him directly, he would use the child as a bargaining chip. "Little one," the businessman said when they approached the building where he worked. "I want to show you something." They entered the elegant lobby of the skyscraper, and the girl was speechless at the grandeur of the place. Polished marble reflected the golden lights. Elevators went up and down silently. Well-dressed people walked with haste and determination. "Do you work here?" she asked, impressed. "I do. In fact, I own part of this building and the company that's up here." She looked at him with a mixture of admiration and confusion. "If you have so much money, why did those men want to hurt you?" The innocent question caught him off guard. How to explain to a 4-year-old the complexities of human greed, the betrayals in business, the power games that moved fortunes? "Sometimes, when people have a lot of money, other people get jealous and do bad things," he explained simply. "Like the mean aunt who lived near my hiding place," she murmured. "She always said that street children were pests and deserved to be hungry." The businessman felt a wave of anger against all the adults who had failed that child. But before he could respond, his secretary approached with a worried expression. "Sir, I need to talk to you urgently," she said, casting a curious glance at the girl. He led her to the reception desk and asked the girl to wait there, promising to be back soon. In the office, his secretary handed him a letter that had arrived by messenger. "We know about your new little friend," read the message written in block letters. "If you don't sign the transfer of shares by the end of the week, the child will disappear like her mother disappeared." "You know we're not kidding." The businessman's hands trembled as he held the paper. The threat was direct and clear. His partner had found out about the girl and intended to use her against him. Worse yet, the message suggested that they knew something about her mother's disappearance. He ran back to the reception desk, but the place was empty. The girl had disappeared. "Where did she go?" he asked the security guard desperately. "A lady came to pick her up," the man replied, confused. "Said she was a relative of the child, that you had arranged it." The girl seemed to know her. The businessman felt the blood run cold in his veins. He ran out of the building, desperately searching the nearby streets, but there was no sign of the girl or the mysterious woman. His mind worked frantically, trying to understand how they had acted so quickly. He took out his cell phone and called the private investigator. "They took the girl," he said without preamble. "I need you to find out where they took her, now!" "Calm down, let's think clearly," the investigator replied. "Who would this woman be that the child would know?" "I don't know. The girl has no family, no one." "Wait! You said she mentioned a mean aunt who lived near her hiding place. It could be someone she knew by sight, someone the kidnappers hired to gain her trust." The businessman slammed his fist against the wall of the building. How had he been so naive? He should have foreseen that his enemies would use the girl against him. Now she was in the hands of dangerous people, and all because of him. Meanwhile, in an abandoned house in the suburbs of the metropolis, the girl was sitting in a dark corner, hugging her knees and trembling with fear. The woman who had introduced herself as aunt in the building had completely changed her behavior as soon as they left. Now she watched her with cold, calculating eyes. "Stay quiet there," the cruel stepmother growled, lighting a cigarette. "If you make a noise, you'll regret it." The girl didn't understand what was happening. A few hours ago, she was eating in a cozy restaurant with the gentle man she had saved. Now she was a prisoner in a house that smelled of mold and abandonment, with a woman who seemed capable of any cruelty. She closed her eyes and thought of her mother, as she always did when she was scared. Would someone come to save her one day, as she had saved the businessman in the alley? Or was she destined to suffer forever, going from one terrible situation to another, even worse? Outside the house, the greedy partner was talking on the phone with someone, his voice low but menacing. The plan was working perfectly. Now all he had to do was wait for the businessman to become desperate enough to hand everything over on a silver platter. But what he didn't know was that he had completely underestimated the determination of a man who had found something to protect after years of emotional emptiness. Night fell over the metropolis like a heavy blanket, but the businessman couldn't think of rest. He paced back and forth in his luxurious apartment, his cell phone glued to his ear as he coordinated a desperate search for the missing girl. Every minute that passed was torture, imagining what those people might be doing to the innocent child. "I found something," said the private investigator when he finally returned his call. The woman who took the girl was seen getting into a black car with fake plates. "I managed to track the vehicle to an abandoned area in the suburbs." "I'm going there now," the businessman replied, grabbing his car keys. "Wait, you can't go alone. These people are dangerous, and if you show up there, they might hurt the child to intimidate you even more." The wealthy man's frustration was palpable. All his money, all his influence, and he felt completely powerless to save a 4-year-old girl. For the first time in years, something mattered more to him than business and profits, and that something was in the hands of his enemies. Meanwhile, in the abandoned house, the little one had spent hours trying to find a way to escape. The cruel stepmother had left for a few hours, locking her in a small, dark room. With the determination of someone who had learned to survive on the streets, she searched for any gap, any weakness in the old structure of the house. That's when she heard voices outside, men talking in low, threatening tones. She approached the dirty window and managed to see through a crack in the glass. The greedy partner was there, talking to 2 other men she didn't recognize. "If he doesn't sign the papers by tomorrow, we'll have to be more persuasive," the partner said coldly. "The kid is just the beginning. We have ways of making him understand who's in charge in this city. What if he involves other people? Investigators, lawyers?" one of the thugs asked. "He won't risk the girl's life. I saw the way he looked at her. He developed a pathetic attachment to a street kid. That will be his undoing." The little one felt a chill in her stomach upon hearing those cruel words. She had saved the gentleman in the alley, but now her own existence was being used to hurt him. Guilt and fear mixed in her small heart. When the men walked away, she redoubled her efforts to find a way out. Her small hands managed to loosen a loose board on the back wall of the room. It was a tiny opening, but she was small and thin enough to fit through. Carefully, so as not to make noise, she squeezed through the opening and came out outside the house. Freedom was there, within reach of her bare feet. She could run away, go back to the streets she knew, disappear into the crowd of the chaotic metropolis. But something made her hesitate. The gentleman was in danger because of her. Those bad people were going to hurt him if she simply ran away. And he had been the first person in 2 years to treat her with true kindness, the first to offer help in finding her mother. With a courage that defied her age and size, she decided to stay close and try to find out more about the bandits' plans. She hid behind some overgrown bushes and waited. On the other side of the city, the businessman had made a decision that surprised even the investigator. Instead of waiting passively, he decided to use his financial resources strategically. He started making calls to influential contacts, people who owed him favors, other business people who could help him. "I need information about my partner," he said to a renowned lawyer he had met at business meetings. "Everything you can find, bank accounts, properties, suspicious connections. That might be risky," the lawyer warned. "If he finds out you're investigating, he's already shown his cards. Now it's my turn to play." While coordinating the financial investigation of his partner, the businessman also hired a private security team. They weren't violent men, but professionals trained for delicate situations. If he managed to locate where the little one was being held, he would need help getting her out of there safely. Throughout the night, information began to arrive. The greedy partner wasn't just a corrupt businessman. He had connections with various illegal activities in the city. Money laundering through phantom construction projects, bribery of inspectors, fraudulent contracts with the local government. It was a true empire of corruption that hid behind the respectable facade of the construction company. "I found something important," the investigator said when he called at 5 in the morning. "Your partner owns several properties registered under false names. One of them is an abandoned house that was bought 6 months ago. It might be where they're hiding the girl." The businessman felt a mixture of hope and terror. He finally had a concrete lead, but he also knew that he was about to enter a confrontation that could change his life forever. "There's something else," The investigator continued, his voice hesitant. "I found records of a woman who worked as a cleaner in your building 2 years ago. She disappeared around the same time the first problems with your partner started. The girl's mother. It's very likely. And if my suspicions are correct, she didn't disappear voluntarily. The revelation hit the businessman like a punch to the stomach. If his partner was responsible for the disappearance of the girl's mother, then that child had lost everything because of the power games he was involved in. The guilt he felt multiplied, along with an unwavering determination to seek justice. As the sun began to rise over the metropolis, painting the sky with orange tones, the little one was still hidden in the bushes when she saw the cruel stepmother return to the house. She was carrying bags of food and seemed annoyed about something. "That idiot still hasn't called," the woman muttered as she entered the house. "Maybe he needs more motivation to hand over what we want." A few minutes later, she came out of the room screaming like crazy. The little one had escaped. The cruel stepmother ran through the house, searching every corner, every possible hiding place. That's when the house phone rang. It was the greedy partner, and the little one managed to hear the conversation through the open window. "What do you mean she ran away?" The man's voice bellowed through the phone. "You had one simple task. She's too smart for a kid." The cruel stepmother defended herself. "She must have found some way out. If she gets to the businessman and tells him where she's been, our plan will fall apart." "Find her now!" The girl felt her heart race. They were going to look for her throughout the area, and she knew very little of those suburbs to hide effectively. She needed to find a way to get to the gentleman and warn him about the danger. But how could a 4-year-old child cross an entire city alone? That's when she saw something that changed everything. A sign on the main road indicating the direction of downtown. If she could get there, maybe she could find the building where the businessman worked. With the determination that only children possess when fighting for survival, she began to walk along the dusty road, her small feet taking her back to the only place where she felt safe, next to the man who had changed her life with a simple gesture of kindness. The girl's walk along the dusty roads of the suburbs turned into an epic journey of survival. Her small, bare feet ached with every step on the hot asphalt, but she kept walking with a determination that would impress any adult. The morning sun beat down mercilessly, and she had no water or food, only the willpower to reach the gentleman who needed her help. Trucks and cars passed at high speed, raising clouds of dust that made her cough and cover her face with her dirty little hands. Some drivers slowed down when they saw such a small child alone on the road, but she always hid behind trees or poles, remembering the lessons learned on the streets about not trusting strangers. Meanwhile, in the metropolis, the businessman coordinated a complex operation from his office. He had transformed the meeting room into an improvised command center, with maps of the city spread across the mahogany table, telephones ringing constantly, and the private security team receiving detailed instructions. "We found the house," the head of security reported, pointing to a location on the map. "But when we got there, it was empty. Signs that someone left in a hurry. The back door was open. There was food scattered in the kitchen." The businessman's heart tightened. And the girl? There was no sign of her. "But we found something interesting." The man showed a loose board on the wall. "Someone very small managed to escape through here." The marks on the wood are recent. A mixture of relief and worry took over the businessman. The girl had managed to escape, which was good, but now she was alone in unfamiliar territory, possibly being hunted by the greedy partner's thugs. "Organize teams to search all the roads leading back to the city," he ordered. "She's going to try to come back here. It's the only place she knows in the area." That's when his secretary entered the room with a disturbed expression. "Sir, there's a call for you." It's your partner." "He seems very upset." The businessman picked up the phone with steady hands, preparing for the confrontation he knew was inevitable. "You think you're smart, don't you?" The greedy partner's voice was filled with hate. "You hired investigators, private security. You thought you could intimidate me. Where's the girl?" The businessman asked directly, without hesitation. "Ah, your little protégée?" She ran away like a scared mouse. "But don't worry, we'll find her soon. And when that happens, you'll find out what we're capable of. If you lay a finger on her, what are you going to do?" The partner laughed cruelly. "Call your make-believe security guards? Threaten a man who controls half of the illegal business in this city? You don't know who you're dealing with." The call ended, leaving the businessman with a feeling of powerlessness he hadn't felt in years. All his fortune, all his power in business, and he couldn't protect a 4-year-old child from the tentacles of corruption that infested the metropolis. Meanwhile, the little one had traveled almost half the way back to the city when she began to feel the effects of exhaustion and dehydration. Her small legs trembled with fatigue, and she needed to sit in the shade of a tree to rest. That's when she heard the sound of engines approaching. 3 black cars advanced along the road, slowing down as if they were looking for something. She immediately recognized the danger. They were the bad men who had held her prisoner. Quickly, she hid behind the tree, her heart beating so hard that she was sure they could hear it. The cars stopped right in front of her hiding place. Men got out of the vehicles, speaking in low, threatening tones. "She has to be around here," said a voice she recognized as belonging to one of the thugs. "A kid that size can't go too far on foot." "The boss is furious," commented another. "If we don't bring her back, we're all going to pay the price." They began to search the area, looking behind bushes, inside ditches, in every possible hiding place. The girl huddled even more behind the tree, praying that they wouldn't find her. Her muscles ached from staying still for so long, but she knew that a wrong move would mean being captured again. That's when something unexpected happened. One of the men approached her hiding place dangerously, but at that exact moment, a cargo truck passed by on the road, raising a cloud of dust so dense that for a few seconds no one could see anything. The girl took advantage of the confusion to run silently to a better position, hiding in a ditch covered by dense vegetation. When the dust settled, the men continued searching, but now she was in relative safety. "She must have continued down the road," one of them concluded after half an hour of fruitless search. "Let's move on." The cars drove away, leaving the girl alone once again. She waited until she was sure they were far away before leaving her hiding place. Now she knew she needed to be even more careful. They were actively looking for her. Back at the office, the businessman received a call that completely changed the course of the situation. It was from a low-level employee of the construction company, a man who had worked in the archives for decades. "Sir, I know I shouldn't be calling you directly, but I found something I think you should see," the man said nervously. "What is it?" "Old documents about the woman who worked as a cleaner here. The one who disappeared 2 years ago." "She didn't disappear voluntarily, sir. She was investigating discrepancies in construction contracts, noting irregularities she found in the offices when she was cleaning." The businessman felt his blood run cold. "Go on. There's more." She left a folder hidden in the supply room full of copies of documents, photos of fraudulent contracts, evidence of overbilling on public works projects. "It's enough material to bring down your partner's entire scheme." "Where is that folder now?" "It's still hidden. No one cleans the supply room in years, and she chose a very well-hidden place." "I can show you." The businessman felt a wave of hope and determination. He finally had a way to fight his greedy partner with his own weapons. But more importantly, he had evidence that could clarify what really happened to the girl's mother. "Find that folder and bring it to me now, and don't tell anyone about it." Meanwhile, the little one had resumed her walk, but now with much more caution. She left the main road whenever she heard the sound of cars, hiding until she was sure it was safe to continue. The sun was stronger, and she was starting to feel dizzy from the lack of water and food. That's when she saw something that filled her with hope, a sign indicating that she was only 6 miles from downtown. Her feet hurt terribly, but the prospect of reuniting with the gentleman gave her renewed strength. Not far away, one of the businessman's security teams had found traces of a child on the road, small footprints in the dust, a mark where someone had rested in the shade of a tree. They were following the trail, racing against time to find the girl before the greedy partner's thugs reached her. The race was just beginning, and the fate of a brave child depended on who would reach her first, the protectors or the predators that infested that corrupt metropolis. The files employee arrived at the businessman's office carrying a dusty folder that seemed to have been forgotten by time. His hands trembled slightly as he placed it on the mahogany desk, knowing that this moment could change everything. "She hid this behind a shelf of cleaning supplies," explained the man, opening the folder carefully. "It must have taken months collecting this evidence." The businessman examined the documents with growing astonishment and horror. There were copies of contracts where the values had been altered, photographs of works that were never completed but were paid in full, records of phantom materials that existed only on paper. His own signature appeared on several documents, but he was sure he had never authorized those transactions. "My God," he murmured, holding a photo that showed an empty construction site with a sign indicating a multi-million-dollar project. "He's been using my forged signature for years." "There's more," said the employee, turning some pages. She noted everything: dates, times, conversations she heard while cleaning the offices. "It is written here that she witnessed a meeting where her partner planned to get rid of anyone who discovered the scheme." The last note in the folder was particularly disturbing. In the careful handwriting of the girl's mother, it was written, "They found out I know about the documents. Tonight, I will try to leave the city with my daughter. If something happens to me, at least this evidence will remain to bring justice." The businessman felt a wave of anger and sadness. That simple woman, who worked as a cleaner to support her daughter, had risked everything to expose corruption and paid a terrible price for it. "Make copies of everything," he ordered the employee. "And then go home. Don't come back to work until I tell you. Your life may be in danger now." While organizing the evidence, the businessman received a call from his security team. There was finally news about the girl. "We found her," said the team leader, his voice filled with relief. "She's about 3 miles from downtown, walking along the main road. She's exhausted, but she seems okay. Bring her in immediately. And be careful. My partner's men are also looking for her. We're already on our way. We're going to intercept her before—" The call was abruptly interrupted. The businessman tried to call back several times, but the phone just rang busy. A chill ran down his spine. Something had gone wrong. On the road, the little one was almost fainting when she saw 2 cars approaching at high speed. For a moment her heart filled with hope. Maybe it was the gentle man coming to get her. But when the vehicles stopped and she saw the familiar faces of the thugs, she knew she was in mortal danger. "We found the little rat," said one of them, getting out of the car with a cruel smile. "The boss is going to be very happy." The girl tried to run, but her exhausted legs gave way. She fell on the dusty road, desperately looking around for some escape. That's when something completely unexpected happened. One of the men approaching her suddenly fell to the ground, groaning in pain. Then another. The businessman's security team had arrived first and was using tranquilizer darts to neutralize the thugs without causing alarm or excessive violence. "It's okay, little one," said the head of security, crouching next to the girl with a gentle smile. "We came to get you at the request of the man you saved in the alley." She looked at him suspiciously for a few seconds, but something in his kind eyes reassured her. When he held out his hand, she took it without hesitation. During the journey back to the city, sitting in the back seat of the air-conditioned car, with a bottle of ice water in her hands, the girl told everything she had seen and heard in the abandoned house. Every detail was important. Every fragment of conversation she had managed to memorize could be crucial to defeating the bad men. "They talked about papers that the gentleman needs to sign," she said, taking small sips of water. "And they said that if he doesn't sign, they're going to do bad things to more people." "You're very brave," said the head of security, impressed by the child's mental clarity despite everything she had been through. "Your information will help a lot." When they arrived at the businessman's building, a small but agitated crowd had formed in front of the building. Reporters, curious onlookers, and company employees crowded the sidewalk, drawn by rumors that something important was happening. The businessman went down personally to pick up the girl in the basement of the building, away from the prying eyes of the press. When he saw her get out of the car, dirty, exhausted but safe, he felt such an intense emotion that he had to hold back from crying in front of everyone. "I thought I had lost you," he said, kneeling to be at her height. "I promised I'd come back," the little one replied with touching simplicity. "And I always keep my promises." They went up to the office through a service elevator, avoiding the main areas of the building where they might be seen. The businessman had prepared a comfortable couch for her, with food, water, and clean clothes. While the girl recovered, he showed her the folder of evidence left by her mother. "Your mother was a very brave woman," he said gently. "She discovered important things about bad people, and that's why she had to hide." The little one's eyes filled with tears. "So she didn't abandon me then? She didn't leave because I was a bad girl?" "No, little one, she loves you very much. And we're going to find her." It was at that moment that the secretary ran into the office with a panicked expression on her face. "Sir, there's a situation downstairs. Your partner has arrived with several armed men. They're demanding that you come down immediately to negotiate." The businessman felt his blood run cold. The greedy partner had decided to go for direct confrontation, betting that he wouldn't risk the safety of the girl. "Take her to the safe room," he ordered the head of the security team. "And don't let anyone get close." "I'm going with you," said the little one, holding his hand with surprising strength. "No, it's too dangerous. You saved me. Now it's my turn to save you again." There was a determination in her eyes that made him hesitate. This child had faced immense dangers to reach him, had survived on the streets for 2 years, had escaped kidnappers. Perhaps underestimating her courage was a mistake. "If you come with me," he said finally, "do you promise to do exactly what I say?" "I promise." They descended together in the main elevator, the little one holding firmly to the businessman's hand. When the doors opened on the ground floor, they were greeted by a tense scene. The greedy partner waited in the middle of the lobby with 6 burly men, while curious onlookers watched through the glass windows. "Finally decided to show up," said the partner with a cold smile. "And brought your little mascot along. How touching." "Leave her out of this," replied the businessman, positioning himself in front of the little one. "Your fight is with me." "My fight is with anyone who gets in the way of my business. And that child has become a very big problem." It was then that the little one took a step forward, looking directly at the greedy partner with a courage that impressed everyone present. "I know where my mom is," she said, her childish voice echoing through the silent lobby. "And if you don't stop being bad, I'm going to tell everyone." The smile disappeared from the partner's face. For the first time since the beginning of that power game, he seemed genuinely worried. The silence that followed the girl's statement was deafening. In the luxurious lobby of the building, everyone present, businessmen, security guards, employees, and even the greedy partner's thugs, stood still, processing the words of a 4-year-old child who claimed to know where her mother was hidden. The greedy partner was the first to recover from the shock, but his expression had changed completely. The mask of control and superiority had slipped, revealing something much more dangerous: desperation. "The girl doesn't know what she's talking about," he said, trying to keep his voice steady. "She's just a traumatized child making up stories." "I'm not making it up," replied the little one with devastating simplicity. "I saw you taking her." "I was hiding, but I saw everything." The businessman felt his heart race. If the girl had really witnessed the kidnapping of her own mother, then she held within her the key to exposing his partner's entire criminal scheme. "Where was this, little one?" he asked gently, crouching beside her. "On the street where I lived before I went to the other places," she replied, closing her eyes, as if reliving the scene. "There were 3 men in a black car. They said she knew things she shouldn't know." One of the greedy partner's thugs shifted nervously, whispering something in his boss's ear. The tension in the air was palpable, as if everyone knew they were witnessing a moment that would change everything. "And did you see where they took her?" continued the businessman, his voice filled with an emotion he struggled to control. "I didn't see that day," said the little one, opening her big eyes and fixing them on the greedy partner. "But later, when they caught me, I heard them talking. There's a big house far from the city where they keep people who know their secrets." The greedy partner took a step forward, fury shining in his eyes. "Enough of this nonsense." The woman disappeared on her own, abandoned her daughter, and fled the city. "That's a lie!" shouted the little one, for the first time losing her composure. "My mother would never leave me. She promised she'd always come home." Tears streamed down the child's dirty face, but she didn't back down. There was an inner strength in her that impressed everyone present, the strength of someone who had lost everything but was still fighting for the truth. It was at that moment that something completely unexpected happened. The cruel stepmother, who had been hired to kidnap the girl, appeared at the entrance of the building accompanied by 2 police officers. She looked nervous and scared, constantly looking over her shoulder as if expecting to be attacked at any moment. "That's her!" shouted the cruel stepmother, pointing to the girl. "The child who was kidnapped." The greedy partner was visibly disturbed by the woman's unexpected arrival. His plans clearly didn't include her showing up with the police. "Wait!" said one of the police officers, studying the strange scene in the lobby. "Who are all these people? Why are there armed men in a commercial building?" The situation was quickly spiraling out of the greedy partner's control. He made a discreet sign to his thugs, who began to position themselves strategically around the lobby. The businessman noticed the movement and understood that he needed to act quickly. "Officer," he said, addressing the nearest policeman, "this child is a witness to a serious crime. She has information about her mother's disappearance 2 years ago." "It's true," confirmed the little one, looking at the police officers with renewed hope. "They took my mom because she found out bad things that bad man was doing." The cruel stepmother seemed to realize that she had made a terrible mistake in bringing the police. I just wanted to return the child to where she belongs," she stammered. "And where exactly does she belong?" asked the police officer, suspecting that there was much more to this story than met the eye. It was then that the little one did something no one expected. She ran to the cruel stepmother and, looking directly into her eyes, said, "I know you helped me escape from the ugly house. Why did you do that?" The question caught the cruel stepmother completely off guard. For a few seconds, she visibly struggled with herself, as if making a decision that would change her life forever. I couldn't see a child suffering anymore," she admitted finally, the words coming out with difficulty. "When I saw you locked in that dark room, I remembered my own daughter who I lost years ago." The greedy partner immediately understood that he was losing control of the situation. "She's lying," he shouted. "It's all a setup to incriminate me." But the cruel stepmother had found courage somewhere deep in her hurt soul. "I'm not lying," she said, looking at the police officers. "He paid me to kidnap the child, and I know where they're keeping other people prisoner." The chaos that followed was inevitable. The greedy partner tried to flee, but was intercepted by the businessman's security team. His thugs tried to resist, but were quickly subdued by the police officers who had called for reinforcements. In the midst of all the confusion, the little one remained by the businessman's side, holding his hand tightly and watching everything with a disturbing maturity. She had started that chain of events simply by saving a stranger in a dark alley, and now she was about to recover everything she had lost. "Where is that house you mentioned?" asked the police officer to the cruel stepmother, who was now cooperating completely. "About an hour from the city, hidden on a rural property. There are at least 3 people there, the girl's mother and 2 other women who discovered things about his dirty business." The businessman felt a wave of hope and terror at the same time. They would finally know the truth about the fate of the girl's mother, but they would also face the possibility that it was too late. "Little one," he said, kneeling beside her again, "do you want to come with me to look for your mother?" "Is she still going to be there?" asked the girl, her voice full of a fragile hope that broke his heart. "We don't know. But we're going to find out together. While the police officers organized the operation to rescue the prisoners from the rural property, the businessman looked at the little one, who had completely changed his life. In just a few days, she'd gone from a stranger on the streets to becoming the most important person in his world. But he also knew that the next moments would be crucial. If they found the girl's mother alive, it would be the happy ending they both desperately wanted. If not, well, he would have to find the strength to help a 4-year-old child cope with a loss that no one should face so young. The caravan of police cars and security vehicles formed in front of the building, ready to leave for the rural property where the secrets would finally be revealed. The little one got into the businessman's car, her eyes fixed on the road ahead, her heart full of an explosive mixture of fear and hope. The truth was waiting for them, and nothing would ever be the same after they found it. The road leading to the rural property snaked through hills covered with dense vegetation, moving further and further away from the hustle and bustle of the metropolis. During the trip, the little one remained silent in the back seat of the businessman's car, watching the landscape through the window with an expression that mixed anxiety and determination. "Are you nervous?" he asked gently, looking in the rearview mirror. "A little," she admitted. "What if my mom doesn't recognize me? I've grown so much since she left." The businessman felt his heart tighten with the painful innocence of the question. "Mothers always recognize their children, little one, no matter how much time passes." The caravan slowed down as they approached a rusty iron gate that marked the entrance to the property. The cruel stepmother, who was traveling in one of the police cars, confirmed that this was the place. Through the gates, they could see a large, poorly maintained house on top of a hill, surrounded by overgrown land and old trees. "Keep the child in the car until we know it's safe," instructed the officer commanding the operation. "No," protested the little one vehemently. "I want to go too. If my mom is there, she needs to see me." The businessman hesitated, torn between the desire to protect her and the understanding that she had the right to be present at the most important moment of her life. "Let her come," he said finally. "But I'll carry her, and at the first sign of danger we're going back to the car." The walk to the house was tense and silent. The police officers advanced cautiously, weapons in hand, while the businessman followed behind with the little one in his arms. She was quiet, but he could feel her small heart beating fast against his chest. The house revealed itself to be even more deteriorated up close. Dirty or broken windows, peeling paint, balconies with rotting wood. It was the kind of place where secrets could be kept without anyone ever discovering them. That's when they heard the first sound, a female voice singing softly, a sad melody that echoed from inside the house. The little one straightened up in the businessman's arms, her eyes wide with recognition and hope. "It's her," she whispered, her voice trembling with emotion. "It's the song she sang to me before I went to sleep." The police officers forced the main entrance carefully, revealing a dark and dusty interior. The sound of the singing came from somewhere in the back of the house, guiding them through narrow corridors and empty rooms. They found a door locked with several bolts on the outside. When they opened it, they revealed a small, dimly lit room where 3 women were sitting on the floor. One of them, too thin and with prematurely gray hair, looked up when the light entered the room. The little one recognized her mother immediately, despite the changes caused by 2 years of captivity. "Mommy!" she cried, reaching out her arms. The woman looked at the child as if she were seeing a ghost. For a few seconds, she didn't seem to believe what her eyes were seeing. Then tears began to stream down her face as she rose unsteadily. "My little one, my little girl," she babbled, running to take her daughter in her arms. The businessman put the little one down, and she ran to her mother in a reunion that moved everyone present. Mother and daughter embraced as if they wanted to merge into one person, crying and laughing at the same time, whispering words of love that seemed to heal 2 years of suffering and separation. "I knew you'd come back," said the little one, burying her face in her mother's neck. "I knew you hadn't abandoned me." "Never, my dear. I would never abandon you." They brought me here by force, but every day I thought of you. Every day I prayed to see you again." The other two women in the room were employees of different companies who had discovered irregularities in the greedy partners' businesses. One worked for a contractor that had contracts with the government. The other was an accountant in an auditing firm. All had been silenced in the same cruel way. While the paramedics examined the rescued women, the businessman watched the reunion between mother and daughter with a mixture of joy and melancholy. Part of him felt immensely happy for having helped reunite that family. Another part knew that now he would have to say goodbye to the girl who had become so important to him. "Thank you," said the little one's mother, approaching him with her daughter still in her arms. "I don't know how to thank you for what you've done for us." "She saved me first," he replied, gently touching the child's hair. "I just returned the favor." It was during the trip back to the city that something happened that no one expected. The little one's mother, still weak but determined, began to tell her complete story to the police officers. She revealed not only the financial crimes she had discovered, but also something much more shocking. "There's something you need to know about the businessman's wife," she said, looking directly at him. "The accident she suffered. It wasn't an accident. The world stopped for the businessman." "What are you saying?" "I was cleaning his office the night before the accident. I heard a phone conversation where he ordered her car to be sabotaged. She had discovered the same documents I found, and she was planning to expose everything." The revelation hit the businessman like a bolt of lightning. For 2 years, he had carried the guilt for his wife's departure, believing that their constant fights had led her to drive recklessly on that rainy night. Now he discovered that she had been murdered by the same man who was trying to destroy his life. "Why didn't you tell us this before?" he asked, his voice hoarse with emotion. "They kidnapped me before I could do anything." "And then?" "Well, who would believe a cleaner against a powerful businessman?" The little one, realizing that something important was happening, looked from the businessman to her mother with concern. "Mommy, why is the gentleman crying?" "Because he found out something very sad about someone he loved very much," explained the mother gently. "Sometimes adults cry when they discover difficult truths." The rest of the trip passed in a fog of conflicting emotions for the businessman. There was joy for the girl's reunion with her mother, relief for having defeated his corrupt partner, but also renewed pain for the loss of his wife and the discovery that she had been murdered. When they arrived in the city, a crowd of reporters and curious onlookers awaited them. The story had leaked to the press. The wealthy businessman who saved a street child and uncovered a corruption scheme involving kidnapping and murder. "What's going to happen now?" asked the little one to the businessman as they got out of the car. It was a question he didn't know how to answer. Legally, she would return to the custody of her biological mother. Emotionally, she had become part of his family in a way he never thought possible. "Now you go home with your mother," he said, forcing a smile, "where you should always be." But as he watched mother and daughter walk together toward the social workers who would help them in the transition back to normal life, the businessman knew that this would not be the last time he saw them. Some connections are too strong to be broken by circumstances, and the bond he had formed with that brave girl had changed his life in ways he was only beginning to understand. The story was far from over. In fact, it was just beginning a new phase. 3 weeks had passed since the rescue, and life in the metropolis had assumed a new routine for everyone involved in the story that had captured the attention of the entire city. The greedy partner awaited trial in a maximum security prison, facing charges that included kidnapping, extortion, fraud, and murder. The cruel stepmother had received a reduced sentence in exchange for her cooperation, and the evidence collected by the little one's mother had exposed a network of corruption that extended far beyond a single company. But for the businessman, none of that mattered as much as the emptiness he felt in his heart. He had grown accustomed to the little one's presence in his life, her drawings scattered around the office, her innocent questions about the business world, her unique way of seeing beauty even in the most difficult situations. Now returning home every night to a luxurious but empty apartment, he understood that all his money and success meant nothing without someone special to share it with. The little one's mother had secured a job at an accounting firm that valued her expertise in detecting financial irregularities. With a decent salary and the compensation she had received for her years of unjust captivity, she was able to rent a small but cozy apartment in a safe neighborhood of the city. The little one had quickly adapted to life with her mother again, but something had changed in her during the time she spent on the streets and then with the businessman. There was a maturity in her eyes that shouldn't exist in a 4-year-old child, a wisdom acquired through suffering that made her seem older than she really was. "Mommy," she said one afternoon while playing with dolls that the gentleman had sent to their apartment, "why doesn't the gentleman come visit us anymore?" The mother stopped tidying up the kitchen and looked at her daughter with a thoughtful expression. She too had noticed the businessman's absence and knew that there was something deeper there than simple courtesy. "He must be very busy with work, my dear," she replied, but her own voice carried a note of uncertainty. "I think he's sad," observed the little one, with the keen perception that had always characterized her. "When he looked at me, sometimes it seemed like he was going to cry, not from bad sadness, but from sadness that hurts the heart." The mother sat beside her daughter, thinking about the child's words. During the years of captivity, she had had plenty of time to reflect on life, on human connections, and on what really mattered. She knew that the businessman had developed a genuine love for her daughter, and she suspected that the separation was being difficult for both of them. Meanwhile, on the other side of the city, the businessman faced his own demons in his renovated office. He had removed all traces of his former partner's presence, rehired unfairly dismissed employees, and implemented new transparency systems. But all that work couldn't fill the hole he felt in his chest. His private investigator, who had become something close to a friend during the recent events, entered the office with a worried expression. "You can't keep going on like this," the man said bluntly. "You're working 18 hours a day. You're not eating right. You're not sleeping. Everyone in the company is worried." "I'm fine," the businessman lied, without looking up from the papers scattered on the desk. "You're not. And you know why? Because you discovered what it means to have a family, and now you're afraid to fight for it." The observation hit home. The businessman finally looked up, revealing the tiredness and pain he carried. "She has a mother," he said. "A mother who loves her and who spent 2 years suffering to get back to her. What right do I have to interfere with that? The right of someone who saved her life. The right of someone she chose to love. The right of someone who can offer opportunities that a single mother, however dedicated, may not be able to provide alone." The businessman stood up and walked to the window, looking at the city that stretched before him. Down there, in a different part of the metropolis, lived the girl who had completely changed his life. "What if I'm being selfish?" he asked. "What if my need to have her close is more important to me than her well-being?" "Then you'd be like your former partner, putting your desires above the good of other people," replied the investigator firmly. "But you're not like that. I saw how you treated her, how you worried about every detail of her well-being. That's not selfishness. It's fatherly love." That night, the businessman made a decision he had been postponing for weeks. He drove to the neighborhood where the little one's mother lived, parked in front of the simple but well-kept building, and stayed there for almost an hour, gathering the courage to go up. When he finally rang the doorbell, it was the little one herself who answered the door. Her eyes lit up with a joy so pure that he felt his heart break and mend at the same time. "You came," she cried, jumping into his arms before he could say anything. The mother appeared at the door soon after, and he could see in her eyes that she had been waiting for that visit for a long time. "Come in, please," she said gently. "It was time we talked." The apartment was small but cozy, decorated with the little one's drawings and photos of the family she had lost and recovered. They sat in the simple living room, the little one clinging to the businessman as if afraid he would disappear again. "I missed you," she said with the brutal honesty of children. "Why didn't you come sooner?" I didn't know if it would be good for you," he admitted. "You're back with your mother, and I didn't want to get in the way." "But you're part of our family now," declared the little one naturally. "You saved me, I saved you, Mommy thanked you, and now we're a family." "That's how it works." The mother smiled at the simple but profound logic of her daughter. "She's talked about you every day since we came back. She asks when you're going to visit her, if you're eating right, if you're sad alone in the big apartment." "Are you sad?" asked the little one, studying his face attentively. He couldn't lie to those big, sincere eyes. "A little. I miss you very much. Then why don't you live here with us? Or we can live in your big apartment." "Renee." The innocent suggestion of the child created a silence charged with possibilities. The mother and the businessman looked at each other, both knowing that they were on the threshold of a conversation that could change everything. "Little one," said the mother carefully, "these are very important decisions that adults need to talk about calmly." "But you like each other, right?" insisted the little one. "You like him, Mommy, I saw. And he likes you too, because he always asks how you are when he talks to me on the phone." The businessman was surprised. He didn't know that the mother had allowed her daughter to talk to him on the phone a few times during the previous weeks. "You let her call me?" he asked. "She insisted so much that I couldn't deny it," explained the mother. "And it seemed important to her to keep in touch. You two have developed a very special bond." It was then that the little one did something that surprised both adults. She took the businessman's hand and her mother's hand, joining them with her small hands. "There," she said with satisfaction. "Now we're a real family." The simple but powerful gesture of the child created a connection between the three that was impossible to ignore. The businessman looked at the little one's mother, a woman who had suffered immensely but maintained her strength and dignity, who had raised an extraordinary daughter in impossible circumstances, who had risked everything to do what was right. "There's something I need to tell you," he said to the little one's mother. "Something I've been thinking about for weeks." She nodded, waiting for him to continue. "When I saw you in that house, when I saw you two reunite, I realized something I had never felt before. It wasn't just happiness. For having helped, it was the feeling that I had finally found my true family." The honest confession created an atmosphere of intimacy and possibility that none of the three had experienced before. The businessman's words hung in the air like an unspoken promise, loaded with a meaning that went far beyond what any of them had imagined possible weeks ago. The little one's mother studied him with eyes that had learned to read people during years of adversity, looking for signs of sincerity in his words. "Are you sure about what you're saying?" she asked softly. "Because my daughter has already suffered enough abandonment for a lifetime. If you enter her life permanently, you need to be prepared to stay, no matter what happens." The seriousness of the question revealed a mother who had learned to protect her daughter through painful experiences. The businessman understood that this wasn't just a conversation about feelings, it was about commitment, responsibility, and building something lasting. "I've never been so sure of anything in my life," he replied, looking directly into her eyes. "For years, after I lost my wife, I thought I had also lost the ability to truly love. Your daughter showed me that I was wrong." The little one, who had listened to the whole conversation with the concentrated attention of someone who understands more than she should for her age, got up and walked to the small window of the apartment. Outside, the lights of the metropolis flickered like earthly stars, and she could see other families in their illuminated homes, living their simple and happy lives. "Mommy," she said without turning around, "do you remember when I was very little and you told me stories about families that chose each other, not just the ones that were born together?" The mother smiled at the memory. "I remember. You always asked if we could choose a daddy for our family. And you said that maybe one day someone special would appear who wanted to be part of our story." The little one turned to them, her eyes shining with a wisdom that impressed. "I think he appeared. The businessman felt an emotion so intense that he had to blink several times to hold back tears. That extraordinary child had survived abandonment, life on the streets, kidnapping, and separation from her mother, but still maintained the ability to believe in love and human kindness. "But there's one thing," continued the little one, returning to them. "If you're going to be our daddy, you need to promise you'll teach us about money and business. I want to learn how to help people like you helped me." The statement struck a deep chord in the businessman's heart. His fortune had been built through years of hard work and intelligent decisions, but he had never considered the true purpose of all that wealth until he found someone who needed real help. "I promise," he said solemnly, "and I also promise that we're going to use our fortune to help other children who are going through what you went through." It was at that moment that the little one's mother made a decision that surprised even herself. During 2 years of captivity, she had dreamed not only of reuniting with her daughter, but also of building a completely new life, free from the fears and limitations that had defined her past. "There's something you both need to know," she said, her voice gaining a firmness she hadn't demonstrated in a long time. "During all the time I was imprisoned, I thought a lot about second chances and about what really matters in life." She stood up and went to a drawer, from which she took out a small, worn notebook. "I wrote a lot while I was there, letters to my daughter that I could never send, plans for the future, dreams about what our life would be like when we reunited." She opened the notebook to a specific page and read aloud, "When I get out of here, I don't just want to survive. I want to really live. I want my daughter to grow up in a family full of love, opportunity, and security. If someone good enough appears to love us, I'm going to have the courage to accept that blessing." The businessman was moved by the revelation. You wrote this while you were imprisoned?" "I wrote it. And now I'm seeing that it wasn't just a desperate dream." She looked at him with an intensity that revealed years of reflection. "You saved my daughter when she needed it most. More than that, you loved her when she had no one. That tells me everything I need to know about the kind of man you are." The little one had sat on the floor between them, watching the conversation with fascination. To her, it seemed like one of the stories her mother used to tell, but this time it was real, and it was happening to them. "So does that mean we're going to live together?" she asked, with barely contained hope. "It means we're going to try to build something beautiful together," replied the businessman, "but slowly, respecting each other's time. And it means you're going to teach me to drive big cars like yours." The unexpected question elicited laughter from both adults, breaking the emotional tension of the moment. "When you're older," he promised. "Much older." During the weeks that followed that conversation, a new routine began to take shape. The businessman spent almost every night at the small apartment, having dinner with his new family, helping the little one with drawings and games, talking to the mother about plans for the future. It was during one of those nights that something unexpected happened. The little one had fallen asleep on the sofa after dinner, exhausted from a day full of play, when the phone rang. The mother answered and was visibly disturbed by the conversation. When she hung up, her face was pale with worry. "It was a lawyer," she said to the businessman, "representing the family of your former partner. They're trying to challenge the evidence from the trial, claiming that I lied about what I saw and heard." The businessman felt a familiar anger rise in his chest. Even imprisoned, his former partner was still trying to cause trouble for innocent people. "They can't do that," he said firmly. "We have too much evidence, too many witnesses. But they have expensive lawyers and influence. And I'm just a former cleaner who spent 2 years missing. Who's going to believe my word against theirs?" It was then that the little one woke up, disturbed by the tense voices of the adults. "What's happening?" she asked, rubbing her sleepy eyes. The businessman and the mother exchanged glances, trying to decide how much they should tell the child. But she had already demonstrated an impressive maturity in dealing with difficult situations. "Some bad people are trying to say that your mother lied about the bad things she saw," explained the businessman gently. The little one was silent for a moment, processing the information. Then her eyes lit up with an idea. "But I saw things too," she said. "When they caught me, I heard them talking about other people they made disappear. And I saw where they kept important papers in a different house. The revelation caught both adults by surprise." "What house, little one?" asked the mother. "A house with a blue gate near where they took me first. I heard them saying they kept important things there, things that no one could find." The businessman felt a wave of hope. If the little one had witnessed more evidence than they initially thought, perhaps they had a way to strengthen the case against the former partner and his allies. "Could you draw that house?" "Draw how to get there?" The little one nodded with determination. "I can, and I can remember the voices of the bad people. They talked about hiding money and papers in places the police would never look." That night, while the little one drew detailed maps from her memory, and the mother wrote down everything she could remember from the conversations she had witnessed during captivity, the businessman made calls to lawyers, investigators, and contacts in the press. The battle wasn't over. In fact, it was entering a new phase where they would have to fight not only for justice, but for the protection of their new family against powerful people who would not hesitate to hurt them to protect their own interests. But this time they weren't alone. They had each other, and that made all the difference. The investigation, based on the little one's drawings and memories, led to discoveries that surprised even the most experienced investigators. The house with the blue gate that she had described with impressive accuracy turned out to be a property registered under the name of a shell company, used as a repository for compromising documents and undeclared money. When the police obtained a search warrant, they found not only evidence of the crimes already known, but also detailed records of a much broader money laundering operation involving local politicians, judges, and businessmen throughout the region. "Your daughter has an exceptional photographic memory," said the private investigator to the little one's mother, showing photos of the seized material. Every detail she described was exactly where she said it would be. The little one, sitting in the living room of the apartment that now seemed too small to accommodate her new, expanded family, watched the adults with a serious expression. There was something in her eyes that indicated that she understood the importance of what was happening, even though she was so young. "Does this mean the bad men won't bother us anymore?" she asked directly. "It means they're going to be locked up for a very, very long time," replied the businessman, sitting beside her. "And it means you were very brave to help us find this evidence." But the tranquility was short-lived. The next day, when the businessman arrived at the office for an important meeting with new investors who wanted to help rebuild the company, he found a disturbing scene. His secretary was visibly shaken, and there were signs that someone had ransacked some files during the night. "They didn't take anything," explained the head of security, "but they were clearly looking for something specific. They only touched the files related to the lawsuit." The businessman felt a chill down his spine. "Do they know where I live?" "We don't know, but we suggest that you and your family stay in a safe place until we identify who's behind this." The decision to move temporarily to the businessman's mansion in the suburbs was made in a matter of hours. The little one's mother packed their few possessions with an efficiency born of years of moving quickly when necessary, while the child watched everything with a mixture of excitement and apprehension. "Are we going to live in the big house?" she asked as they got into the armored car that the businessman had hired for transport. "Only for a while, until everything is safe," explained the mother. "It's like an adventure where we have guards and tall gates," murmured the little one, demonstrating once again her keen perception of reality. The mansion was impressive even by standards of extreme luxury. Immense gardens, a crystal-clear pool, rooms larger than the entire apartment where they had lived, and a staff that seemed larger than the population of a small town. But what most impressed the little one wasn't the size or the opulence. It was the sadness that permeated every elegantly decorated room. She could feel that this house had been a place of deep loneliness for the businessman for years. Did you live here alone? She asked, exploring the enormous library with its walls covered in books from floor to ceiling. I did, he admitted. It was very lonely. It doesn't have to be anymore, she declared with simplicity. Now there are people to fill it with noise and joy. During the following days, something magical happened in the mansion. The presence of the little one and her mother transformed the cold, formal spaces into something that felt truly like a home. Children's drawings appeared on the stainless steel refrigerators of the gourmet kitchen. Her laughter echoed through the silent hallways, and her constant questions about everything filled the void that had dominated that house for so long. It was during one of those nights that the businessman made a discovery that would change everything once again. He was organizing some old documents in his private office when he found a folder that he didn't remember having kept there. Inside, there were detailed financial records of investments he didn't remember having made. Shares in companies he didn't know, investments in international funds, transfers to accounts in tax havens. All the transactions were dated within the last 5 years and bore his electronic signature. "This is impossible," he murmured, flipping through page after page of evidence that incriminated him in illegal financial activities. It was then that he understood the true extent of his former partner's plan. For years, that man had not only stolen money from the company, he had also built an elaborate scheme to incriminate the businessman if he was ever discovered. That morning, he called his lead attorney urgently. "They've planted false evidence against me," he said without preamble. "I have documents here that prove I've been involved in money laundering and tax evasion. How do you know they're false?" asked the attorney, immediately alert. "Because I don't remember making a single one of these transactions, and because they magically appeared in my office at the mansion, where no one should have access." The attorney was silent for a moment. "That changes everything. If they manage to present this evidence in court, you could end up being indicted, along with your former partner." "There's more," continued the businessman, his voice laden with growing concern. "If they've planted evidence against me, they're probably also preparing something against the little one's mother, and maybe even against the child herself." The realization hit him like a lightning bolt. The break-in at the office, the threats from the former partner's family, the convenient discovery of incriminating documents. It was all part of a larger plan to discredit the key witnesses and reverse the convictions. He ran to the room where the little one slept, just to make sure she was safe. He found her sleeping peacefully, clutching a teddy bear she had been given, breathing softly, as only children can do even amidst chaos. In the bed next to her, her mother also slept, but more restlessly, as if her dreams were disturbed by memories she would rather forget. Observing the two people who had become his family, the businessman made a decision that would change the course of everything. He wouldn't wait passively to see what his enemies would do next. It was time to go on the offensive. The next morning, he gathered a team of investigators, lawyers, and financial crime experts. "I want you to find out everything about my former partner's family," he ordered. "Where they got the money to hire expensive lawyers, what connections they have in the judicial system, what companies they own. What if we find evidence that they're also involved in the crimes?" asked the lead investigator. "Then we'll expose everything. I'm not going to let them use an innocent child as a pawn in a dirty power game." While his team worked, the businessman spent the day with his new family, trying to maintain a normal appearance despite the approaching storm. The little one seemed to sense his tension because she stayed closer to him than usual, offering drawings and hugs as if she knew instinctively that he needed comfort. "Are you worried about something?" she asked during lunch, studying his face attentively. "A little," he admitted. "But nothing we can't solve together. Do you want me to draw more houses for you to look for? I remember other places where they talked about hiding things." The child's innocent offer made him realize something important. She wasn't just a victim in this story. She was a courageous survivor who was willing to fight for what was right. And if she could be so brave at 4 years old, he could certainly find the courage to protect her at 30. You know what? He said, picking her up. I think it's time to show these bad men that they messed with the wrong family. The little one smiled, and in that smile, he saw not only trust, but also a determination that reminded him that some battles are worth any risk when we fight for love. The businessman's counteroffensive began with a discovery that no one expected. His team of investigators, working day and night to unravel the web of corruption that extended far beyond what they imagined, found bank records that revealed something shocking. The greedy partner's family was not only trying to reverse the convictions, but had also been actively involved in the crimes from the start. Take a look at this, said the lead investigator, spreading documents on the table in the mansion's library. Your former partner's sister owns 3 shell companies that have received multi-million-dollar contracts from the government in the last 5 years. All of them overpaid for services that were never provided. The businessman studied the papers with growing indignation. And the money? Divided between offshore accounts and investments in luxury properties. They're not just accomplices, they're the financial masterminds of the whole operation. The little one's mother, who had insisted on participating in the meetings despite the businessman's protests about her safety, watched everything with an expression of growing determination. Does this mean they knew exactly what they were doing when they kept me prisoner for 2 years? Worse than that, replied the investigator. We found evidence that they planned your kidnapping months in advance. They hired private investigators to find out about your personal life, identified that you were a single mother and vulnerable, and deliberately waited for the right moment to act. The revelation hit everyone like a physical blow. The little one, who was playing quietly on the floor of the library, looked up when she heard the tense tone of the adults' voices. Does that mean they hurt me on purpose? She asked with the devastating clarity that always characterized her. The businessman knelt beside her, carefully choosing his words. It means they're very bad people who hurt you both because they wanted to hide bad things they were doing. But now we're going to be able to make them pay for what they did. We are, he promised firmly, and this time they're not going to be able to hurt anyone else. During the following days, the businessman's team worked tirelessly to gather all the evidence into an irrefutable presentation. But it was the little one who provided the final piece of the puzzle in a way that surprised everyone. She was drawing, as she always did when the adults discussed serious matters, when she suddenly stopped and looked up with an expression of sudden understanding. I remembered something important, she said, interrupting the investigator's conversation. What was it, little one? Asked the businessman, immediately attentive. When they caught me, before they took me to the ugly house, they left me in a car for a long time. And I heard a conversation on the phone. She paused, concentrating on the memory. A man talking to a woman about documents they were going to plant in your house to blame you. The silence that followed was total. All the adults present understood the importance of what the child had just revealed. Can you remember the exact words? Asked the lead attorney, her voice charged with restrained excitement. The little one closed her eyes, as she always did when trying to access important memories. The man said, The papers are already in his office. When they discover them, he'll be as screwed as his brother. And the woman replied, Are you sure the signatures looked convincing? And he said, Our forger is the best. No one will be able to prove that he didn't sign them. The revelation was like an earthquake in the room. Not only did they have confirmation that the evidence had been planted, but also a recorded admission of the existence of a professional forger working for the criminal family. My God, murmured the little one's mother. She heard them confessing to the crime. And if we can identify that forger, added the investigator, we can dismantle their whole scheme. It was then that the businessman made a risky decision that would change everything. We're going to set a trap, he announced. We're going to let them think we're worried about the planted evidence. We're going to set up a meeting offering a deal. That's too dangerous, protested the attorney. "If they suspect it's a trap, they won't suspect, because we're going to give them exactly what they want to hear, that we're willing to negotiate to protect our family." The operation was meticulously planned. The businessman would call the criminal family's lawyers, feigning desperation and willingness to make a deal that benefited them in exchange for leaving his new family alone. During the meeting, which would be secretly recorded, they hoped that they would confess enough details to incriminate them definitively. The little one, who had been informed about the plan in a way appropriate for her age, made an observation that demonstrated once again her exceptional intelligence. "You're going to pretend you're scared of them to make them tell their secrets." "Exactly," confirmed the businessman. "Sometimes, to beat bad people, we need to be smarter than they are. Just like when I pretended I was sleeping to hear them talking in the ugly house. Just like that. You were very smart at that moment." The meeting was scheduled for the end of the week in a luxurious hotel suite in the city center. The criminal family, represented by the former partner's sister and two expensive lawyers, arrived with the arrogance of those who believed they were in a position of strength. "It's good that you finally understood the situation," said the woman, a respectable-looking lady who perfectly hid her criminal nature. "We thought it might be necessary to be more persuasive." The businessman perfectly played the role of a desperate man. "I just want to protect my family. I'm willing to give up everything if necessary." "Not everything is needed," she laughed cruelly. "Only half of your liquid assets and your stake in the company. In exchange, the compromising documents we have against you disappear forever." "And how do I know I can trust you?" "Because we're professionals, just like our document specialist, who created evidence so perfect against you that not even the best expert could prove it was false." The confession was captured perfectly by the hidden recording devices. But the most incriminating moment came when one of the lawyers, drunk with the feeling of victory, revealed specific details about other victims and undiscovered crimes. "You think you're the first? We've done this to at least 6 other business people in the last 10 years. The difference is that they were smart enough to pay without making a fuss." When the meeting ended, the businessman had in hand not only enough evidence to defend himself, but also to expose a criminal conspiracy much larger than anyone had imagined. That night, back at the mansion, he found the little one waiting for him in the living room, still awake despite the late hour. "Did it work?" she asked simply. "It worked," he confirmed, picking her up. "The bad men told all their secrets, and now the police will be able to arrest all of them. Does that mean I can stop having nightmares?" The question broke the businessman's heart. He hadn't realized that the child was still suffering from the trauma of the recent events. "It means that you, your mother, and I are going to be able to live in peace as a real family, without anyone else trying to hurt us." She snuggled into his arms, and for the first time in weeks, she seemed completely relaxed. "I love you, Daddy," she said softly, using for the first time the word they had both been avoiding. "I love you too, my brave little one," he replied, feeling that he had finally found his place in the world. But even in that moment of victory, he knew that the real battle was still to come. Not against external enemies, but for the construction of a normal and happy life for his chosen family. The events that followed the incriminating recordings happened at breakneck speed. In less than 48 hours, the police had arrested the entire criminal family, seized millions in illegally obtained assets, and discovered a network of corruption that stretched across 3 states. The national press covered the case as one of the largest anti-corruption operations of the decade. But for the little one, none of that mattered as much as the promise she had received. They could finally live in peace as a real family. "Can I call you Daddy in front of other people too?" she asked one morning while they were having breakfast in the sunny kitchen of the mansion. "You can call me whatever you want, little one," replied the businessman, still getting used to the emotion he felt every time he heard that word. "And can I tell everyone that I have a complete family now?" The little one's mother, who had observed all that transformation with a mixture of gratitude and admiration, smiled at her daughter's pure joy. "Of course you can, my dear. That's exactly what we have. A complete family." It was during those morning conversations that an issue arose that none of them had adequately considered, where they would live permanently. The mansion was beautiful and safe, but it was also too large and too formal for the everyday life of a family with a young child. "You know what I want?" said the little one, interrupting a discussion about schools and extracurricular activities. "I want a house that's neither too big nor too small. A house where I can draw on the walls if I want to." The businessman laughed at the simplicity of the request. "Draw on the walls?" "Yes. At my grandma's house, who took care of me when I was a baby, there was a wall just for drawings. She said that houses need to have marks of the people who live in them." The observation touched something deep in the businessman's heart. For years, he had lived in impeccable but sterile spaces, places that reflected his financial success, but not his personality or history. The idea of a house marked by the presence of his family, with drawings on the walls and toys scattered around the corners, seemed infinitely more attractive than any magazine decoration. "Then let's look for a house like that," he decided. "A house that can be truly ours." The search for the perfect house became a family adventure. Every weekend, they went out to visit different properties, each with its own characteristics and possibilities. The little one had become the most rigorous critic, rejecting houses for reasons ranging from "there's no good tree to climb" to "the windows don't let in enough light to draw." It was on a Sunday afternoon, when they had already visited dozens of houses without finding anything that felt right, that they discovered the perfect place. It was a 2-story house on a quiet street, with a garden large enough for a child to play, but small enough not to need a full-time gardener. "This one," cried the little one as soon as they got out of the car. "This is our house." "How do you know?" asked the mother, amused by her daughter's certainty. "Because it has a tree with a branch at the right height to hang a swing. It has big windows to let in plenty of light. And," she paused, looking at the facade attentively, "because it looks like a house that wants to have a family living inside it." The businessman looked at the property with fresh eyes. In fact, there was something welcoming about the architecture, something that invited family life. It wasn't luxurious like the mansion, nor modest like the apartment where they had lived temporarily. It was simply right. During the guided tour, each room seemed to confirm the little one's intuition. The living room had enough space for games, but also for intimate conversations. The kitchen was large enough to cook together, but cozy enough not to seem impersonal. And there was a perfect room for the little one, with 2 windows that filled the space with natural light. "And this wall here," said the realtor, pointing to a smooth wall in the child's room, "would be perfect for, well, for anything an imaginative child wants to do." The little one looked at the businessman with hope in her eyes. "Can I?" "You can do whatever you want with your wall," he promised. "In fact, I can even buy special paints for you to create your works of art." That night, back at the mansion, they signed the purchase papers and began to plan the move. But it was during these preparations that an unexpected complication arose. The social worker responsible for monitoring the case called with news that left everyone apprehensive. Despite all the evidence and confessions, some bureaucrats in the judicial system were questioning the legality of the informal adoption that had developed between the businessman and the little one. "The problem is that technically you haven't gone through the proper legal processes," explained the social worker during a tense meeting in his office. The whole situation was so extraordinary that some standard procedures were ignored. "What kind of procedures?" asked the little one's mother, visibly worried. "Psychological evaluations, background checks, supervised adaptation period. It's all red tape, but some judges are insisting that they be followed retroactively." The businessman felt a wave of panic. "Does this mean they can separate our family?" "Not if they come to the conclusion that the current arrangement is truly in the best interest of the child." But the process can take months, and during that time—" He paused, hesitant. "During that time, what?" insisted the mother. "During that time, the little one should technically be in state custody in a temporary foster home until everything is resolved." The silence that followed was devastating. After everything they had been through, after finally finding stability and happiness, bureaucracy threatened to destroy everything. "No," said the little one, who had remained quiet throughout the conversation, but clearly understood what was being discussed. "I'm not going to another family. This is my family." "Little one, sometimes adults have complicated rules," began the social worker. "I don't care about the rules," she interrupted with a determination that surprised everyone present. "They saved me, I saved them, and now we're a family. If the judges don't understand that, then they're not very smart." The brutal simplicity of the child's logic exposed the absurdity of the entire situation. Here was a girl who had survived abandonment, life on the streets, kidnapping and trauma, who had found people who loved her unconditionally and offered her security and opportunity, being threatened with separation because of paperwork. It was then that the businessman made a decision that would define the rest of their lives. "I'm not going to let this happen," he said firmly. "I'm going to use every resource I have. I'm going to hire the best lawyers in the country. I'm going to move mountains if necessary. This child will not be separated from her family because of bureaucracy." "What if that doesn't work?" asked the mother, her voice laden with fear. "Then we'll find another way. We'll move to another country if necessary. We'll do whatever it takes to keep our family together." The determination in her voice made it clear that she wasn't bluffing. She had found the purpose of her life in protecting and loving that extraordinary child, and no force on earth would prevent her from fulfilling that mission. "You know what?" said the little one, looking at all the worried adults around her. "I'm not scared, because I learned that when people truly love each other, they always find a way to stay together." Her simple but profound words brought a new perspective to the situation. They had overcome obstacles much greater than bureaucracy. They had defeated powerful criminals, exposed systemic corruption, and found each other against all odds. A little legal paperwork wouldn't be enough to destroy what they had built together. 6 months after the bureaucratic threat that almost separated her family, the businessman was standing on the porch of the new house, watching the little one play in the sunny garden. The wall of her room had been transformed into a colorful art gallery, filled with drawings of free birds, happy houses, and a family of 3 always holding hands. The legal battle had been won in a way that no one expected. On the day of the final hearing, something extraordinary happened that changed the course of everything forever. The little one, now 5 years old and more articulate than ever, had asked to speak directly to the judge. Against all protocols and expectations, she was allowed to give her testimony in a special session. "Mr. Judge," she had said, standing on a chair to reach the microphone, "I want to tell you something important that no one knows yet." The entire courtroom had fallen silent, waiting to hear what that extraordinary child had to say. "When I lived on the streets and was very sad and hungry, I made a drawing every day," she continued, showing a crumpled paper that she always carried with her. "It was a drawing of the family I wanted to have one day." She unfolded the paper, revealing a faded but clearly recognizable drawing. A yellow house, a tall man, a smiling woman, and a small girl, all holding hands. "I drew this a year before I met my daddy in the alley," she said, her clear voice echoing through the silent courtroom. "I drew exactly what he looks like, even without ever having seen him before." The impact of the revelation was immediate and profound. The whole room understood that they were witnessing something far beyond coincidence. It was as if destiny had conspired to unite those 3 people. "And there's more," continued the little one, looking directly at the judge. "My mom always told me a story about angels who appear when people need them most. She said that one day an angel would appear to take care of us both." She pointed to the businessman, who was sitting in the front row with tears in his eyes. "He appeared the day I needed him most. And when I saved him in the alley, it was because something inside my heart told me he was my angel. Just like he knew that I was his angel. The silence that followed was broken only by the sound of people crying emotionally throughout the courtroom. The judge himself, a stern man with decades of experience, had to clean his glasses several times before he could speak. "In 40 years of career," he said finally, "I have never witnessed such a powerful testimony about the true meaning of family." The judicial decision was unanimous and immediate. Not only was the adoption approved retroactively, but the case was used as a precedent to simplify future processes involving extraordinary family formation situations. But the biggest surprise came 3 months later, when the businessman received a call that would change everything once again. "There's something we discovered about the little one's origin," said the private investigator, his voice laden with emotion. "Something that explains a lot. What did you discover?" "She's not just an ordinary child who has been through extraordinary situations. We went to investigate her mother's family, and we discovered something incredible." The businessman sat down, preparing himself for another revelation. The little one's grandmother, who died when she was a baby, was known in the community as someone with a special gift. People said she could see things that were going to happen, that she had a special connection with higher powers. "Are you saying that—" "I'm saying that the little one's ability to remember impossible details, to recognize you in the drawing before she met you, to always know instinctively who to trust and who to avoid, may be hereditary. The final revelation explained so many things that had seemed miraculous or impossible. The way she had found the courage to save a stranger, how she had survived alone on the streets for so long, how she had memorized conversations and details that helped defeat the criminals. That afternoon, when he told the discovery to the little one's mother, she just smiled with the expression of someone who had always known something important. "My mother always said that our family had special guardians," she said. "That in each generation, someone was born with the gift of protecting and saving other people." "And you believe in that? After everything we've been through?" "How can I not believe?" It was then that the little one appeared running from the garden, her hair flying in the wind, her face illuminated by the pure joy of a loved and secure child. "Daddy, Mommy, come see what I found." She led them to the big tree at the end of the garden, where she had found something that filled her with fascination. "Look," she said, pointing to a small nest in the low branches. "There are baby birds here, and you know what's even cooler?" "What is it?" asked the businessman, crouching to be at her height. "The mommy bird didn't fly away when she saw me. She kept singing, as if she knew I wasn't going to hurt her babies." The little one smiled with a wisdom that went far beyond her 5 years. "I think she knows I'm a person who protects, not one who hurts." In that moment, watching his daughter of the heart interact with the wild birds as if she spoke the same language as them, the businessman understood that he had become part of something much greater than a simple family. He'd become part of a lineage of protectors, of people who appeared when others needed saving. "You know what?" he said, embracing the little one and her mother under the shade of the tree. "I think our story is just beginning." "Why?" asked the little one. "Because now we have a house full of love, a united family, and—" he looked at her with a smile full of possibilities. "And because I know that you're going to grow up to save many more people. And are you going to help me?" "Always. For the rest of my life." On that golden afternoon, sitting in the garden of their perfect house, the three understood that they had found something that went far beyond common happiness. They had found their joint purpose, to use the love that united them to spread goodness throughout the world. The girl who had saved a millionaire in a dark alley had become the daughter of a man who discovered that all his fortune only made sense when used to protect those he loved. The mother who had survived 2 years of captivity for love of her daughter had found a partner who understood that family is not about blood, but about choice and dedication. And the businessman who had lost the ability to trust after losing his wife had discovered that true love sometimes comes in unexpected packages, in the form of a courageous child who sees angels where others see only strangers. As the sun set over the distant metropolis, painting the sky with golden and pink hues, the chosen family remained together in the garden, planning for the future and knowing that, together, they could face any challenge that life brought. Because they had learned the most important lesson of all: when true love finds its way, miracles happen every day. And sometimes, just sometimes, a 4-year-old girl can save not only a man's life, but his soul too. The story had ended exactly as it should, with a family united, justice done, and the promise that goodness always wins, even in the darkest places of the most chaotic city in the world.